On January 20th or 21st, depending on your time zone, both the Sun and Pluto enter Aquarius within about 11 hours of each other. So this is a big deal, kind of like the real start to 2024. And in honor of that, we've got Timothy Glenn here again for round 5 of our Pluto series. So welcome, Timothy.
Thank you. Yeah, this is going to be fun. Looking overall at 2024, we'll just say that the astrological weather is absolutely relentless.
Mhm.
So either buckle up or let go.
Yeah, or both.
Yeah,
So,
whatever.
yeah. So where should we begin? I mean, I know on the 20th and 21st, it's not only the Sun and Pluto moving into Aquarius, but it's also when Mercury finishes the shadow period of that recent retrograde. So a lot of things kind of funneling in there, and we're recording this on January 16th, and yesterday and today Mars is crossing that same point. So lots of activity around 8 Capricorn and then also around 0 Aquarius. So what are you noticing?
Well, I'm noticing a lot because I can really feel this coming up because, well, this is the reason we started this whole series. After all, at 1 degree of Aquarius, your moon, my sun, it's like, okay, here we go. So I'm just going along for the ride here. And yes, I'm prepared to reinvent myself at this point. What I'd like to do is just give a little outline over the ingress of Pluto. Yeah, we're going into Aquarius here for real because a huge thing about 2024 is we get finished with this because we've had this quintuple transit going on. And as we know, Pluto's very slow. He never does a flyby, and he's doing an extra round this time because we've got 5 exact passes over that cusp. So we have the ingress going here. Yeah, and with a birthday on January 21st, yeah, okay, and I can feel the pressure. But on the 2nd of May, he'll station retrograde and start that slow journey backwards. And on the 1st of September, there he is going back into Capricorn, station direct on the 12th of October. And then the ingress will finally be completed on November 19th. But there's a lot of talk out here from people who don't do astrology at all that things are so tumultuous here in the US, we may not even have a 2024 election, at least not on schedule or in the way that people would expect it. Now, if you think for a moment, okay, they love October surprises, right? Okay, so Pluto, right at the very tail end of Capricorn, stations direct on October 12th.
Mm-hmm.
And up to November 19th. Well, when is that election scheduled to be? Just in the midst of that. And
Yep.
that's going to be like the absolute last gasp, desperate effort of the old controllers to try whatever they can do to throw a monkey wrench into the works. So we'll see.
Yeah, and another thing to keep in mind that I've been really tracking because my natal Chiron and the US natal Chiron are just, half a degree apart, is that in the midst of all of this Pluto into Aquarius energy, which we'll get into some of the conjunctions and other things going on with that, but we've also got at the time of that ingress, the North Node will be in the 19 to 20 degree range of Aries, and the US natal Chiron is at 20 plus Aries. So it's like right in there getting a direct hit. And then that eclipse that we have on April 8th is exact Sun, Moon, Chiron, exactly conjunct to the minute within minutes of the US natal Chiron. So I kind of feel like entering this year with Pluto moving into Aquarius again for a much longer haul, a much more like, let's really do the overhaul. And when it does move back into Capricorn, it's only in that anaretic degree. It's only in that very final, last call degree for that sign. And so it just feels like these energies of Pluto and the North Node. They'll also be conjuncting on February 19th or 20th. That's right at the Watergate degree. So lots of trigger points for the US in coming months, but really for this entire year.
And another huge one during the year is going to be one that I've been looking forward to for years, and that's Uranus and Jupiter right smack together. And yeah, which is crazy. And if you look up, that time, it's like, okay, well, that's where we actually have that U.S. Chiron return going exact, same day.
Yeah. And that's going to quincunx, 21 degrees Libra, which is in orb of an opposition of the US natal Chiron. So, yeah, I mean, lots of very intense energies and narratives happening. And like the hyperbole is really off the charts at this point, and it seems like kind of maximum wounding in order to heal, kind of like let's break the bone in order to reset it. That's the imagery that I've been getting.
Yeah. So also on the 23rd of January, we will have the heliocentric ingress of Pluto into Aquarius.
And can you explain a little more for people that don't know what that means?
Oh, yeah. We use what we call geocentric astrology because, yeah, we're living on Earth. So it's always from our perspective on this planet. So, yeah, we have planets going retrograde and direct all over the place. But from heliocentric, which is looking at things from the center of the solar system, that's the sun itself, there's no retrograde. None of the planets are ever going to go retrograde, and they won't go back and forth across a cusp from one sign into another. So considering that Earth isn't alone here, just like we're not alone in this universe, just to expand a little bit to include the whole solar system, from the perspective and the energy of the whole solar system, the actual ingress happens on the 23rd of January, which is pretty damn close to this, it's pretty close. Yeah. So this is going to be wild. And also with the sun and Pluto being right together, so we get that Kazemi effect, oh, this is going to be wild. 2959 of Capricorn. It's like, wow. Okay, just get ready for anything.
Yeah. And I know on my blog I've been talking for quite a while now about how I sensed there was like this distortion field from about December 12th, that new moon in Sagittarius, until the 20th of January. And I kind of had that December 26th full moon in Cancer circled as one of those timeline splits. I noticed that. I mean, I heard from a number of people about deaths that occurred on or around that date. I've heard of other relationship shifts that have like really split where people are on, very different trajectories, but we're still in that distortion period right now. And so it will be interesting what the light of the sun brings to the depths of Pluto and all that shadow stuff. I feel like we're going to be out of that distortion field because of the Mercury shadow period being finished, but it's really just the start. I mean, I feel they really start rocking and rolling in February when we get Venus and Mars crossing that Pluto point. That's going to be quite a ping there.
Yeah, it's real cute with the ingresses here in January and February because we have, of course, the moon's going to cruise through every month, but we also have all three of the inner planets entering Capricorn in January, and all three of them entering Aquarius in February. So yeah, it'd be lots of little activators going on with the big one.
Yeah, Valentine's Day this year is likely to be incredibly intense because both Venus and Mars will be in orb of a conjunction with Pluto. So personally, how is that going to play out? I guess depends on your natal chart, but collectively, what would be your prediction?
Roll the dice, spin the wheel. Who knows? But also for the entire year here, calendar year of 2024, we still have that South Node Libra stuff going on. And so That Valentine's Day, well, you suppose maybe relationship is going to be up. All that stuff's going to be up. All the old tendencies to do the dependency trips and so forth, and all those old issues.
Mm-hmm.
People forming various kinds of relationships, and the other person is viewed as some kind of fantasy fulfillment machine. That's really old world stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And where we are right now, it's like, it's time to transcend this.
Yeah. Well,
And
and the other thing is that so that North Node Chiron conjunction in the same degree as Watergate, that's like 16 to 17 degrees Aries. So anyone with cardinal signs in, say, the 16 to 20 degree range of those signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, this year is going to pop off. And at Valentine's Day, even though that conjunction with the North Node and Chiron won't have gone exact, it's going to be very, very close at the same time that we've got Mars activating Pluto and Venus, which in October we saw Venus kind of play out with like values. And so when you get Venus and Mars together, I mean, sometimes it can be deep passion, especially with Pluto, but with that Chiron opposite the South Node energy, it's probably kind of a heads up that relationships could have some of those more difficult discussions or potential for a lot of healing, though.
yeah. And since we're talking Venus and values, also, this is a great opportunity within relationships to do a little reassessment of priorities.
Mm.
Like in the relationship, what really matters. And we've known for a long time that when people get really upset, they think they're upset about this, but it's really something far deeper.
Yeah. Well, with Pluto, you can count on that there's going to be some kind of unconscious thing brewing. And I mean, for me, with Pluto conjuncting my moon and then it, trines my sun and my Pluto. And I mean, I've been anticipating this time period for about 6 years, just because of Chiron conjuncting my Chiron too. But what that's done for me is just really make me look very deep at what are the energies that are likely to come up. And so for anyone that's being personally affected by these transits, my advice would be go as deep as you can, really be looking at unconscious factors, be looking at, dream work, looking at life as symbolic, because Pluto also rules that, the realm of symbols and the subconscious. And so sometimes, you don't get a free pass, but sometimes you can do a real creative project. I know for me, I'm working on an astrology of near-death experiences research right now for a book. And I'm like, okay, good. That's how I'm engaging that Pluto energy. But we can pick and choose sometimes. And it's not like it makes the transits easy, but it can make them much more productive and speedier in terms of the blessing phase.
Yeah. And really, our priorities will be coming up left and right, and we really need to take an assessment. And of course, it's going to help each of us individually to see where these big things are happening in our own natal charts and in our solar return charts, because everything affects everything here.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, as Holmes used to say to Watson, the game is afoot.
The other thing that I've been noticing too is the role of Mercury in all of this. And so, I mean, with Mercury stationing retrograde on December 13th, right after that new moon in Sagittarius, but then, it's activating, it's finishing that shadow period at the same time that the Sun and Pluto are entering Aquarius. But then some of the Mercury retrogrades this year are very intense in terms of how precisely they either station near the North Node and or Chiron. And so, I mean, the energy is up. And we were talking earlier about the effect on the United States, which, I mean, not to be political, but it's impossible to look at this year without looking at how it's impacting the US natal chart and what's going on. We've got a full moon in January on the 25th on the US North Node. So it's like, in case, you didn't get the memo from Chiron or the transiting North Node, we're going to just ping the natal North Node as well. So, I mean, it's Pluto doesn't do subtle, right?
Not at all. It doesn't do shallow. Not at all. And also, on the 27th, speaking of retrogrades, Uranus is going to finish its retrograde. So he'll station direct on the 27th of January. And then it won't be until, what is April 2nd, when we get the next Mercury retrograde started. So we've got then all of February, March with everybody in direct motion. So when these times happen, it's like, okay, now's the time we can just move forward and just don't hold back. Don't use some retrograde as an excuse. It's like, okay, let's go for the gusto. It's like, okay, this is it, kids. This year is bumpy.
Yeah. Well, and that April 25th is when Mercury stations direct, and it conjuncts the North Node at 15 plus Aries. And at that time, Chiron will be on the US natal Chiron. And so it's like they switch. So January 20th and 21st, the North Node is in that 19-20 degree Aries range, and Chiron is in kind of 15-16 range. And then they flip at the end of that Mercury retrograde in April. And so, yeah, like messaging and information coming through and like on what level, right? Because with Uranus being the higher octave of Mercury, it's like, well, yeah, we have the normal kind of information coming through, but we're likely to get some real surprising whammies that kind of come out of left field with that Uranus energy. And then on September 1st, when Pluto moves back into Capricorn, that's the day that Uranus stations retrograde. So all of these things are so kind of linked, but it feels like there's this real Uranian, Aquarian liberation energy driving most of the progress this year. Would you agree?
Sure. In fact, back to our 0 degrees of Aquarius here for this ingress. Remember on the December solstice of 2020, even the mainstream propaganda channels were talking about the age of Aquarius because we had Jupiter and Saturn very visible right out here in our southwest skies.
Yep.
Every evening you go out and look at them, and they got closer and closer and closer. It was right there on solstice that they not only went exact, but because of different declinations, they often will be conjunct, but one will be higher than the other. This was actually an eclipse. Jupiter eclipsed Saturn.
Oh, that's very interesting.
For the first time since like 1226 AD. Yeah, it's like, it doesn't happen very often. But you look at it and it's like, oh, wow, okay. Even mainstream was like, whoa, age of Aquarius. Okay, well, where's this ingress happening? What's all this stuff about? We're talking about it, and ping, 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 as we ended up with Mercury, Venus, and Mars coming in to activate that spot in February. Whew, all right. Yeah, so, yeah, age of Aquarius. Here we go.
Yeah. Well, and that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction on April 20th also, I mean, it has that kind of liberating energy too. If you look back at the energy of Saturn and Jupiter conjuncting, right? Saturn rules Capricorn, all that top-down authority. And then all of a sudden now we've got the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And so it's like, the expansion is happening for the liberation, the revolution, as opposed to expanding the top-down control mechanism.
Right. And with that happening in Taurus, primary financial sign, okay, kids, let's take a look at the games being played out there, because we know the old plutocracy is teetering around on its last legs, and it's essentially at this point, just smoke and mirrors. So I would expect something to give once we get to that point. April 20th is the focal point of it. But yeah, be prepared for anything. And people are going to be surprised when suddenly there is just this restructuring of the entire financial grid, which has been not exactly user friendly.
Not so much. Yeah.
No. In fact, Babylonian money magic, because we can trace the mindset of that whole thing, at least back to ancient Babylon, when the controllers figured out that all they needed to do was create money as debt.
Mm-hmm.
So any society that accepted that system as its real, this is the way life is, it's just the way it is, like the Federal Reserve System here. Well, then you are a collective debt slave, and there's no way out as long as you're accepting that system. But we've got way too many people who know too much now.
Yeah. I was going to say, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, kind of depending on people's level of consciousness about it and willingness to expand in directions that don't feel like cages, that don't. So the other day when we're having, record cold here and snow and everything, but the other day I have a cage around my garden tower in the backyard, and it collapsed. And it's just, to me, that's so symbolic of this transit of Pluto into Aquarius. It's like, oftentimes you think of like the tower card and, oh, the destruction. Well, the garden tower is just fine, but the cage is completely mangled and collapsed under the heavy weight of the force of nature. And I mean, it's like, wow, there it is.
Yeah. And you are into the Sabian symbols. Now, go back to Jupiter and Uranus. Okay. And that's 21 degrees. So round up to 22.
Mm-hmm.
And just for show and tell time.
Oh, yes.
Okay. In fact, just for fun here, I don't know if this would focus, but first edition, 1973. Yeah, I'm pretty old school. But 22 of Taurus, then, the white dove flying over troubled waters.
Mm.
Now, that's a little bit of a symbology that we can incorporate into this.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be a wonderful, beautiful shift for us. It may not be real comfy and cushy as it happens, but this is really taking the manacles off us, take the shackles off, and we may have to rub them, the muscles, and get some blood back into those parts of ourselves. But this is going to be ultimately a beautiful transition.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that we haven't mentioned is that Neptune will actually hit that 29-degree range of Pisces for a good portion of this year and into next year. And so again, like that final energy, right? So Neptune in his home sign, bringing that cleansing energy, which could be grief, but it could also be just beautiful, unconditional compassion, imagination, spiritual awakening.
Yeah. And speaking of Neptune, I like to watch things like the Pluto Return, etc. And for the U.S., the Neptune opposition.
Mm.
Now, I still like to do the standard 5-degree orb of influence. And like with the Uranus-Pluto conjunction in the 60s, it first came within 5 degrees about, whatever it was, like just a few weeks before the JFK assassination.
Ooh, uh-huh.
Yeah. So it's like, okay. Yeah. So I like to watch that. In fact, just scrap paper here. I just listed all the times where it's stations retrograde, it goes over, and whatever. But finally, it leaves the 5-degree orb of influence on the other side of this on March 18th of this year.
Oh, interesting.
And of course, the big buildup was during 2020, and it went exact in 2021 and 2022. And with Neptune, it's like, oh, gee, can you think of any deception that might have been going on
Mm.
in 2021 and 2022? Oh, but we're getting over the hump with that. We're over the hump and just not quite out of the woods now.
Hmm.
And we can consider that finished.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and the nice thing on the backside of these long outer planetary transits is that I find anyway, like once you've hit the exact and you're kind of in the declining energies, that tends to be when the blessings really start to show up. And so with Neptune, we may see the cleansing of deception, whereas before it was like, oh, the paradigms are falling and all these people that were leaders, all of a sudden people are like, what are they up to? We're likely to have some kind of peace and reconciliation, it feels like to me.
Yeah, I tend to lean toward truth and reconciliation rather than the old punishment game.
Hmm.
Because you've got some people out here in the blogosphere and the vlogosphere or whatever who are just screaming, we must bring these traitors to justice and blah, blah. Well, great. They just pulled you down to their level
Hmm.
and the fighting continues. Yeah, truth and reconciliation. I'll vote for that one.
Yeah. Well, and that enters into kind of the alternate timeline type things. I mean, I'm hearing from a lot of people that are really panicked about the financial implications of what could be happening. People that are kind of like, "Oh my gosh, what is going to happen with this eclipse?" And I mean, there's a lot of fear. And certainly the movies are, supporting that kind of energy. But what I'm also seeing and what I'm experiencing in my own life is incredible breakthroughs. And so, I mean, if you think about Pluto as the destroyer, well, whatever you have in your life that hasn't been working, like offer that up. Then Pluto can just take it away as opposed to you're clinging to try to hold everything together. It's like, well, some stuff has worn out and allowing it to go away, you're surfing that wave instead of getting, blindsided and clobbered.
Yeah. And so as we, especially getting into April now, the eclipse and then of course then we've got Jupiter conjunct Uranus going exact. And this is something, and you're bringing this out about people's approach to it. And yeah, a lot of people are still limited and fear-based just in their overall view of things. For example, even though there are a lot of people who are doing great research and so forth within what's happening with the financial systems and also remember back in the day, I wrote two different articles, Uranus in Taurus, one for
Mhm.
each ingress. And I did mention that, yes, we would have digital currencies coming to the fore. It'd be a big deal. But a lot of these people are still approaching it with the consciousness of the old system. And they're
Mhm.
constantly asking, well, what is gold going to be worth? What is silver going to be worth? What is Bitcoin going to be worth? What about XRP? And what about Ethereum? What's it going to be worth? And yet their consciousness is trying to measure it against the US petrol dollar.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, sorry, guys. Maybe we could let go of that.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see which things come up for healing. I mean, with that Watergate degree emphasized by the exact conjunction, something Watergate-esque could come up. Also, if you were alive in 1972, kind of look back then, what was going on in your life, and it just feels like for the United States, there's a lot of things that have been pushing the envelope and really trying to aggravate the tensions. Especially we saw that in 2021 with Saturn squaring Uranus, right? I mean, that was a lot of friction. But I see it kind of happening again around this Pluto into Aquarius and all the Chiron energies. And a lot of people are talking about it not in astrological terms. You're just hearing, oh, wow, 2024 is going to be really intense. Oh, it's going to be really scary and all of that. But I mean, it could also be incredibly healing. It could be incredibly liberating. It could be incredibly regenerating. And so again, we can choose to some extent where we place our focus. And there's a lot of stuff to focus right now. And so I think with that emphasis on Mercury and Uranus this year too, choose what information you want to download and choose what you want to share because you don't want to be amplifying things that you don't really want.
Humans have been really good at that. Mastered that one. But speaking of information and big information and so forth, remember that we're going to have another planetary ingress this year. This guy named Jupiter, after going exact with with Uranus, is going to enter Gemini next month. So also then he's going to be trining Pluto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that energy in the last week of May is really quite lovely, actually, because it's not just Jupiter moving into Gemini, but we've got Jupiter and Venus conjuncting right in that 28 to 29 range of Taurus before they go into Gemini trining Pluto. So to me, that feels very benefic and like whatever Uranian surprises we get, there's also this kind of balm with Jupiter, Venus trining Pluto.
Yeah. And ultimately, for those who are afraid of any drastic change like Uranus tends to bring about for us, it helps to look back over the history of it and see that it's always going to work out for our benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the blessings can be really cleverly disguised, but they are blessings.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking forward to this because, well, being an Aquarian, I really like Gemini rising on top of it. It's like, okay, I got all this top-heavy Aquarius in my chart, and et cetera. I love the big ideas, the big perspectives, and the weird stuff, and liberation.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one thing with Uranus. Wherever he goes, he's just going to look around and say, okay, what's holding you down? What's holding you back? And you could take a little time and calculate everything, and he's going to put the blockage in the crosshairs, and at just the right moment, boom.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing with that Uranus moving into Gemini, that happens what, 2025, 2026, where we get that energy. Looking forward and then also looking way back. I mean, at the time of the US Civil War, Uranus was in Gemini. And so as difficult and challenging as these North Node Chiron conjunctions and all of that, on the US natal Chiron, on that Watergate degree, all of that is very triggering within the US. But I kind of feel like, oh, what a blessing that this is going to have been processed before Uranus makes that shift. It's like when you're looking with the tunnel vision at, oh my gosh, and then this is happening, and then this is happening, it can be kind of overwhelming. But if you kind of pan back and you go, oh, okay, maybe we're troubleshooting, maybe we learned from prior times and we're actually going to heal this stuff rather than let it just pop off.
Yeah. And of course, with Jupiter, with its ingress into good old Gemini, well, at 8 degrees of Gemini, we have the U.S. Uranus.
Yep.
So just get ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, pan the camera back. We can drive ourselves crazy with all the minute details. And I know some people, it's like, how they do this, I don't know. But every single day, they're looking at every little aspect that everything is forming in their chart and their friends' charts or whatever else. Whew, I like big picture because this is actually a big picture year. Things are really hinged on what happens in 2024, and it's up to us. Who's the creator? We are the creator. We're it. We are the field. Back to Rumi. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean in a drop.
Hmm. And that tracks with that 29-degree Pisces Neptune also, which I just feel like that's a big deal. And it's a big deal in conjunction with everything else that's in the mix because again, with the different ways, the different levels this can play out, having the ruler of Neptune at that anaretic degree of Pisces, it just feels like it's humming in the background. It's like the music of the spheres is encouraging this higher vibration, this higher spiritual experience, more kind of 5D as opposed to, oh, the 3D world is crashing around me. It's like, well, yeah, but look at what's happening over here.
Yeah, it's crashing. And it's like, well, thank God. This has been real bogus, dudes. It's like, let's get this done. And it really is just a matter of transcending.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not going to succeed by fighting the existing old system. We're just going to co-create something different that's going to render all of that obsolete anyway. And really, if we're transcending, we're just centering ourselves in our spiritual essence, and we're rendering all of that stuff irrelevant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going on. It's not that we're going to play dumb or be in denial or whatever. It's actually fascinating to watch it.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely, for me, it actually kind of has a relief feel to it, just in the sense that there's been this buildup. I mean, kind of a relentless buildup. And yes, the transits in 2024 are pretty relentless, but it's like fresh energy. It's like, ooh, we're really charging ahead here as opposed to all these big squares, all of this intensity. We're getting more of the trines because Pluto's not going very far in Aquarius, only up to 2 degrees in Aquarius before stationing retrograde. So we're not going to get Pluto squaring Jupiter yet. We're not going to get Pluto squaring Uranus because it's like, everything is just kind of moving into a greater harmony, provided that we rise to the occasion for the healing.
Minor detail, yeah, rise to the occasion. What we do and what our attitude is, what is our approach, what are our states of consciousness as we approach this. And years and years ago, God, it's back in the mid 90s, I was lecturing at an astrology conference, and Noel Till was there, and he was talking in one of his lectures about the hard aspects, but how they can be your friend. Doesn't matter if it's a square or an opposition. It simply is demanding that we take specific action.
Yeah.
And if we take the action, the square can even be our friend. So how about we get through this and we shift to the point where we can look at a coming square or opposition or what have you and go, okay, we can see this is the action we're going to take. This is going to be cool. Yeah, we'll cruise through it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we've been approaching so much just from that state of lack, limitation, fear, and struggle, and blah, 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 all that stuff. How about we transcend all of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and with that North Node, which is very future oriented, conjuncting Chiron, I mean, there is that energy of a specific type of healing. It's the type of healing that is necessary in order to move forward. And then when we've got that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, I mean, both of those have a future orientation. And so there is this like, ooh, we're moving ahead. What are we heading towards? And I know a lot of people are really frustrated right now because they've caught a glimpse of what might be, but it's not there yet. And I keep saying, well, pay attention to your frustration because that's alerting you. I mean, those are those squares sometimes, but it's alerting you to, ooh, something's not matched up here. Something's not gelling. Correct that so that when the time is ripe, you're able to just walk forward.
Right. And we all understand the frustration we can have when, say, you get some really beneficial Jupiter transit coming up, and he comes up so close to the exact point and stations retrograde. Oh, God. Yeah, but he does take a little time, but he'll come back
Hmm.
and put the finishing touches on that. So again, just our approach to it is so important. But if we proceed with faith, just come from a loving heart, put one foot in front of the other, and walk in faith. Because really, well, we have a bit of an advantage over most of the Earthlings here because we've been open and we've been looking at this stuff for so long. But we see a bigger picture, so we can see where this stuff is headed.
Hmm.
I like where it's heading, and
Yeah, it's
especially,
trending positive.
yeah, yeah, and we've also had a lot of dream time input for decades,
Hmm.
and still my all-time favorite dream was like in the early winter months of 1999, and in that dream, it was about 300 years after the shift had occurred. And I was still me, only I was like vibrant and healthy, prime of life condition, having a great time living in the forested hills. And my epithet there was father of the forest, because after the shift, my passion had been reforestation.
Mm.
And so I had actually planted the forest I was living in.
Wow.
And I was remembering back to the early days after the shift and how we still had to use technology. And it was cute. It's like, okay. Yeah, I remember, I used to go up into the trees on like a hover scooter to get up there and had like a Star Wars lightsaber to cut off the branches that the tree was finished with. And at this point, I could just levitate and just lift, it's like, oh, this was all so cool and complete conscious connection with everything.
Mm.
The tree spirits, and there are all kinds of different beings, not just humans around here, not just the animals we know. We had all kinds of interesting life forms from all over the place and different dimensions. We could walk in and out of dimensions. It was freaking awesome. And so I woke up from that one and I thought, okay, if this is where it's going, I'll finish it. I'll complete the mission here.
Uh-huh.
It's
Yeah.
worth it. And so basically our message for people with the insights that we've had into where this is headed, it's worth it. It's going to be more than okay.
Hmm. Yeah. And that levitation is interesting. That's been showing up in my dreams as well, where I've been shown kind of, things that may be happening on one level, but then you just like float up to the higher level and it's like, oh, there's food all over the place. Oh, wait a minute, I'm not being attacked. I'm up here. And it's very what is it? The Seven of Wands, where he's on like the higher level. The wands are poking up at him, but they can't touch him. He's already up there. And I feel like for a lot of people that are probably listening to this, you are at that higher level already. Like you're doing better than you think you are, and allowing yourself to just kind of relax into that energy is one of the ways that you can really claim that energy.
Yeah. And at that other level, we realize it's kind of like that thing of, you have no power here.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, uh, we really are coming to the point where we don't have to worry about things that are happening on a specific level because all we can do is shift our frequency beyond where those entities can even reach.
Hmm. Yeah. And one of the movie scenes that always has stuck with me is at the end of the Celestine prophecy. If you've ever seen it, they're being attacked, but they disappear. It's like they're out of the range of frequency for the people that are operating on that lower attacking level. And the people are like standing in the circle and it's like they're not visible to the other people. And I've had experiences like that actually many times where I am like very clearly not visible to the people that are around me. So I mean, I know that this is very possible with moderating your energy. And again, that fear energy is so heavy, it's so dense. And so if you want to be experiencing more of this higher level, then tapping more into the joy, tapping into, does it feel expansive? Does it feel joyful? Does it uplift me? Go for that energy.
Yeah. In fact, this was illustrated for us long ago, like late 60s. There was this TV show called Star Trek, the original series. I think the episode was called Mission of Mercy or something like that. And they were at this planet that looks like old Bible times or something. And it turns out that these were like extremely evolved, advanced spiritual beings. And they just maintained this illusion that this is, they weren't worth messing with. But also the Klingons showed up. Um, they were ready to start their big war. And then the Organians were the people of that planet who just said, we're not even going to allow that here. Your weapons aren't going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it turns out that, after this discussion with Kirk and Spock, they just went, just okay. And that's when, Spock is standing there with his tricorder and his pure energy. Say, well, what do you make of it, Spock? Say that the Organians are as far above us on the evolutionary scale as we are above the amoeba.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we are at the very verge of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, allow your mind to expand into some weirder possibilities, because in addition to the intensities that we're likely to have this year, I think we're going to see some kind of wild stuff. And wild isn't necessarily bad, but it might be very different, like fairy world kind of stuff. I mentioned in one of my more recent videos about all the fly agaric mushrooms that are just appearing all over the world this year and last year. I mean, it's pretty weird. I'm still getting photos of those coming in from all over the place in the strangest locations too.
And we will get to the point where we can just drift in and out of like states that would be like twilight state dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And the normies, as some people would call them, who haven't just woken up yet and may not. It's up to them. There's no judgment in it. How many times were we in the cosmic recycle bin? We decided, okay, we're transcending now. We're going to graduate from this. But the beauty of this is that there is no one fixed reality. And so we'll be able to drift in and out of other states and still have this like dimensional overlap where we can share realities. But just like with our conceptual lives, it's like now each of us, we have our places where, we are that higher self. And so we have an understanding of things and a perspective on things that other people aren't going to catch up to. But where can we meet and communicate and understand and share? Well, where you and I work together, it's like that's a bit beyond where most of the earthlings are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing is anybody who's ready, willing, and able is going to be able to take advantage of the shift of energy here and move to these levels. Yeah, it's going to be really, really beautiful.
Yeah. Well, that seems like a good note to end on here. Any last things to share? And also, how can people find you?
Okay, soulpurposereadings.com. And for people who had been trying to access that website the last couple of months, my website was down. And
Oh dear.
I didn't even know it. So the data has been retrieved and it's been restored and it's back online. So soulpurposereadings.com.
Great. Great. Well, thank you. And I'll have you back on when Pluto stations retrograde,
Okay.
and we'll see what has happened in the interim.
All
So
right.
thank you. All
It's gonna be fun.
right.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Take care.
But that's just part of that, last ditch desperate effort of the old controllers.
Yeah.
The censorship. It's like we don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
That's like it's so obvious at this point.
YouTube, like the algorithm would simultaneously be telling me, great job on this video. People are watching all the way through. And then it's like times that it's shown it as a thumbnail to people, it's like 10. It's just like not doing it. But the cool thing that happened was because I was just like, okay, there's no point in doing this right now. Like it's a closed door at the moment. I started working on this book idea, and that's actually coming along very well. So, and I'm like connecting with some pretty incredible people that have had near-death experiences, and it like completely changed how I've thought of my life because I've had so many near-death like experiences that I never researched it before. I was like, yeah, I know that there's, stuff beyond but I'm realizing something happened to me when I threw myself off the changing table at 9 months old. I'm like, I mean, I had colic, relentless colic, and then I threw myself off the changing table. To my knowledge, I didn't die, but my colic immediately ceased and never returned after that. And I
Wow.
always was able to talk with the dead and always able, like I had all the characteristics of someone that died as a child. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. It's been such an adventure. But well, for both of us, a lot of stuff happened early so that the veils weren't pulled all the way down for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, that wasn't necessarily something that would fit into society that we were being told is reality.
Right.
And we're looking at something that was like, no, that's not what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Uh,
What I like is that we haven't invested so much in the old system. Like there's nothing to cling to there. I'm like, bring on the new.
yeah,
Just bring
yeah,
it.
yeah, because the old system didn't really appeal to us.
Yeah.
Even in times where we were getting some advancement or success or whatever you call it in the old 3D world, there was still some hollow, empty feeling in it that just wasn't right,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't fulfilling. There's something beyond this.
Yeah.
So yeah, like let's have this entire old game come to its conclusion here. It's like the analytic degree of everything. It's like, okay, we're ready for a whole new gig here.
Yeah. I might have Mike keep some of this in because this was kind of good. We'll see how it plays, but very cool.
Wing it.
Yep. All right. Well, you hang in there with all this rock and roll craziness.
Yeah, and you too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.